Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Moms and Some Labels. Two Moms and Some Labels is a podcast brought together so that we can bring families and caregivers to a shared space to be able to network, commune, and share and gain ideas in a safe place through these challenging times that we may face. There's so many things that come up, and we all need resources and ideas and encouragement to be able to continue to make it through this journey that we have. And so for today, we are going to be talking about a rare diagnosis. And we have a special guest with us that has a child with a rare diagnosis, and she is going to introduce herself if you want to take it away.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Felicia Charbonneau, and I have a 7-year-old daughter named Gwen, or her name's Gwendolyn, but we call her Gwen or Gwenny. And when I was pregnant with her, she received her diagnosis, which is called agenesis of the corpus callosum. And that's a really long slur of words that most people go, I'm sorry, what did you say? So what that is, though, is that so your brain, you have the two hemispheres, and the corpus callosum is what connects the two hemispheres to communicate to each other. So she does not have that piece of her brain. And so what that means for her is that basically it's like if you took the highway away from your brain, and so your brain has to create back roads for communicating. So learning new skills like riding a bike, which crosses the midline, those sort of things, just takes her a little bit longer. And so it's definitely a spectrum disorder. A lot of, some people go their whole lives and never even knew that they have this disorder. And then some people are entirely impacted by it in different ways because there could be other anomalies that occur with that, such as heart defects and everything. So, but when we got her disorder, it was very surprising, and I didn't know a lot about the brain at the time, and so it sounded very scary when someone's like, "Your daughter's missing a piece of her brain," and so yeah, it was definitely a journey, and it kind of started off with us knowing something was up, but not knowing what. And because when they do like the blood panels early in your pregnancy to check for things like just Down syndrome or other just trisomies, she came back as potential spina bifida. And so I went in kind of with that mindset of preparing for that. And then it totally diverted into this whole other world and completely. And my doctor had never even had a single incident with that yet. So it was very jarring at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's very, very scary to, you're at the hospital, you're giving birth, your, baby's life are in the hands of doctors, that went to school for years, and yet, like they still don't have experience or much knowledge of, this diagnosis that is here. Like what were your feelings and what was going through your mind during that time? And did you ever find a doctor? Do you have a doctor that is, kind of versed in or experienced dealing with this condition?
Yeah, so it was quite interesting process because when I first got the diagnosis, I was with a OBGYN who has been in the industry for longer than I had been alive. And I was like, hey, do you have any experience with any babies that have had this? And he said no. And then of course his next question was like, oh, would you like to continue this pregnancy? And I was like, yes, and then I was like, oh gosh, okay. So he sent me to a specialist, the medicine, like the fetal, they specialize in disabilities, or when you get those rare diagnoses. And so a little bit more understanding of what was going on and kind of worked me through the processes and stuff. And so as we kind of were navigating getting the official diagnosis, my daughter also started having growth restriction. She wasn't really growing well. So that became kind of more of the top of the concerns for her. And so I was fully prepared to end up having to have her induced much earlier than expected. And they were like, we could have her as early as 34 weeks. And so I kept hopping around all these different, I had like my primary doctor, but then I had the specialist and like all these different people involved, and had to do non-stress tests and stuff just to make sure she was okay. And so long story short, we ended up inducing her at 37 weeks, and we had a full NICU team ready to take her because they really didn't know what to expect when she was born. They didn't know if she was going to be breathing on how big she really was. And she came out very tiny. We induced her at 37 weeks, and she was 3 pounds, 13 ounces. So she was more like a 32 weeker size, but she was breathing. She was able to hang out with me for at least a day. And then she ended up going to the NICU more for just jaundice and stuff. It was more kind of what was expected. So she was in the NICU for a week and did pretty well. And they kind of checked more again on the spinal stuff just to make sure the spina bifida really still wasn't a concern. And then sent us home with this tiny little baby, And so there was definitely a lot of doctors involved in just like going from being primarily concerned about her diagnosis to worrying about her size, then just wanting to make sure she's okay. And then, we got her out. She was doing pretty good considering. And, then it was kind of like, okay, we'll take it from here and kind of see how things go sort of thing, and that's kind of, and then it took a couple months for us to really experience anything where like she started kind of having vision problems and such like that. So that's when things kind of started picking up for needing specialists and stuff like that. But because a common comorbidity, I can't even say the word, a common associated disorder is like having issues with your vision. And she can see pretty well, but she had nystagmus, which in your eyes kind of shift a little bit and have a hard time focusing. And then she had some other little here and there things. But overall, I will say that we are very blessed in the sense that she is pretty healthy. She's on growth hormones. She, has some sensory things, but all things considering, we got very fortunate with, she doesn't have any congenital heart defects or anything like that. So.
No, yeah, that's awesome. So how long did you guys stay in the NICU?
She was only in the NICU for about 7 days. And it was funny because when she got admitted to the NICU, it was like, we're either going to send her home or we're going to send her to the NICU. And it was very like,
oh, wow.
I was like, because that was like how on the cusp she was of being like, cool to go home and like, well, we're gonna keep her in the NICU and her under the lights and stuff. And I was like, brand new mom. I'm like, I think I'd rather you keep her here because that's
And then she was 3 pounds, and they were still going to send her home weighing 3 pounds.
Yeah, and like so she wasn't really eating great and stuff, and her temperature was kind of iffy, and like and she needed the light, so her bilirubins were a little low and stuff. And so I was like, but like she was like kind of improving, but I don't know, it was really weird, like. Either she's going to be good or we're going to admit her. I was like, okay. And I'm glad they admitted her because it gave us time to kind of. And then the first night when she was home, I was like worried that I was going to have to take her back.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was, the thing with the really cool thing about what happened with her diagnosis is that I found social groups on Facebook and stuff of parents that have children with this disorder. And I was able to, throughout my pregnancy, connect with these other parents that were experiencing it, have already been experiencing it for years. And that's what really gave me peace of mind is those other parents, the doctors, it's like, oh yeah, I heard of it once in medical school, but that was not the extent of their knowledge. Whereas these parents really kind of, they showed you, hey, here's my child that has this going on and they're doing okay. It's like, yeah, we have our struggles, but we're getting through life and they're happy kids or, stuff like that. So.
Okay. So when she came home, did she take a bottle and do everything like that?
Yeah. So when she was little, she didn't I tried nursing and stuff and that wasn't really successful for me, but she took a bottle and, all the things that babies do, but, it's just, like I said, she started having some vision stuff and then some other kind of offbeat things that had nothing really to do with her corpus callosum being missing. It was just kind of like, she had this, now I can't even think of what it's called, but you can get them externally, but it was behind her eye. It was just like this swelling behind her eye. So she had to take a medication for that because it was like making her eye kind of like puffy. So that was fun because there's like this medication they put her on that's actually for like blood pressure medication, but it works to reduce the swelling. So it was on a blood vessel. So it's like, there was that, but it didn't really have anything to do specifically with her disorder. It was just kind of something that happened, I think. But a lot of people get this diagnosis, and I've noticed are just kind of in the dark and afraid like that their baby isn't going to be okay, you know, and it's such a scary thing feeling like alone in that, because when you search it, it's kind of daunting and scary. Just like when people say don't Google things. I'm a Googler. I have to I have to Google. I have to research. I'm like, I got to know everything I can know. But if you don't know, if you don't go down the right path, you could get into some pretty dark spaces. And so that's where the networking has really been amazing. And I've started speaking out for my daughter's disability. And I've had moms reach out to me and being like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant right now. I've been really scared. And I found your video. And I was like, this is what I wanted, you know, to be what people find when they're looking about this disorder is that they find somebody that's like, hey, look at all the amazing things that could happen. You don't know what's going to happen, but there's hope in that, not that your baby's not going to be okay, you know, and that's kind of what happens when you just Google it. And so it's just been really a great finding those connections. And through our, like, there's a national organization that's fantastic. They're called the NODCC, and they're absolutely amazing. They have conferences every 2 years where everyone can gather and meet others that have the disorder, and they teach on it, and you can meet with people that do studies and everything. It's just a fantastic thing. So there's definitely those resources. It's just, it's hard to find them if you don't know what you're looking for. So.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. So does she attend regular school?
Yeah. So she is in a general education class about 70% of the day. She just got up to that point. We started her off not a full day because her sensory abilities it was just too much. And nowadays they start school full day at like preschool, and I was like, absolutely. She's tapped out. She was tapped out half days, and then so she just now officially got up to a full day of school, and she's in the general education. You know, a good chunk of the time she still has she has occupational therapy, speech therapy, and then outside of school she's getting things like feeding therapy because she eats like 5 things. So we're working on that. Yeah. Her food of preference is cheese quesadillas, and that's about it. So, you know.
I'm with her.
I love them too, but I'm like,
right. What are her other foods she likes? What else does she like?
It's basically right now, so it started off more of a variety of palate. Like a lot of kids they'll try different things when they're babies, but it's as she's gotten older, it's actually significantly decreased. And obviously a lot of typical kids have food preferences or, you know, but hers comes down to, it's very sensory, and she like has so right now the solid food is primarily cheese quesadilla, which I'll sneak chicken into. And then to get like fruits and veggies, she won't touch any like normal fruits and veggies. So we'll do this like milk concoction with a food packet, like with all the stuff in it. So she'll drink like her little smoothie and the quesadillas. And then she used to eat these like Gerber ravioli things, but they discontinued them. And I'm like, no. So you it's hard when you rely on a specific brand or something, because then if it goes away or they change it, then these kids are there's no tricking. There's no tricking.
Right. They know, like, hold on, this is something.
This is not Gerber. This is Chef Ready. What's going on? I don't know.
Yeah. It's like she used to like apple juice boxes, but it had to be only one kind of juice box, and they changed the design, and it was like no go out.
Really? Wow.
So it's just but no, it's just, so we're working on trying to kind of help with those food aversions and getting that palate back up, because she used to eat all kinds of things like scrambled eggs and refried beans and macaroni and cheese, and it's just the list has slowly dwindled. And I'm like, and she's on growth hormones, so her appetite is increasing, but her food options have decreased.
Really? So, okay. Now, is that part of the diagnoses? Is that part of her diagnosis? That
it's really hard to say. So the thing with her disorder, which I'll shorten it to just ACC, is that a lot of times it kind of is a gray area of whether it's considered autism or just ACC, and they can kind of coexist. She did get an autism diagnosis, which is great, but a lot of those things that come with that are sensory things and, sensitivities. So like she has huge auditory sensitivities, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Like she's very attuned to different things, but she also is very sensitive and very to where it's hard for her to get past certain things. So sometimes she'll get fixated on something. And so it's kind of, I think a lot of people with ACC do also have these sensory things going on, but they just look different for everybody. So it just really is such a spectrum, just like autism is. And it kind of, like I said, they can kind of coexist similarly. So, yeah.
So when you were talking about her corpus callosum, so my daughter, she has cortical visual impairment, and so with the CVI, it has to do with the corpus callosum. Also, like a part of it, I don't know if it's like missing or it's damaged from the brain bleed that she had, but the visual impairment that is a part of the damage from the corpus callosum. And like she has a lot of sensory things, and so it's also like we don't know exactly what she sees. So with your daughter, like she can see well, like she can see everything, or does she wear glasses?
Yeah, so she does wear glasses, and her vision isn't like too horrendous. Like I'm blinder than she is. I use contacts, but she has like a null point where she has to, sometimes she'll tilt her head to kind of focus on something. And then she does have some other things that they're monitoring through there, and I can't remember all of the terms that they use for it, but it's just something that they'll kind of continue to watch and kind of see how it goes. But her left eye is a little bit weaker from that blood vessel thing that developed at one point, but overall, I think she can see pretty well. She's very attuned to what's going on more visually now, especially as she's gotten older. I've seen it improve. So I think it's just more of a slower development for her. And so I think before it was like she couldn't, when she was 3 months old, she was not really like tracking, like babies are supposed to kind of follow things. She wasn't really doing that. But as she's gotten older, her vision has gotten stronger, and her willingness to kind of observe the world has gotten stronger. Like she is more visually observant. So I'm relieved in that sense that it hasn't impacted her in that way where her vision is getting worse over time or anything. And it's hard to say in the long term, but yeah, like those kind of coexisting brain things. Like she has a couple other things going on in her brain too. Like her pituitary gland is a little bit smaller and kind of in the wrong place. And then she has some spots in her brain where there's like more gray matter than there's supposed to be. So they said that with ACC, there's already an increase of seizures, but they think that with those spots on her brain that there's even more of an increase, but so far none, but it could literally happen at any point in her life. So, but I mean, I've met other adults with ACC who they didn't know they had it until they had a seizure at like 20 years old. So it's just like one of those things you always have to be kind of aware of happening, but not to be too hung up on it, but yeah.
So it's something that symptoms can come later on.
Yes.
So she might not. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean overall, like the thing with the corpus, so it's like I said earlier, it's a midline disorder. So normally it impacts things like the midline. So like the vision, like you said, was it your niece or your relative?
My daughter.
Your daughter. I'm sorry, your daughter. I was like, wait, who had the actual diagnosis? So like her, like it's like those things that are down the middle. Like I said, the heart is one that's often impacted, the abdominal, area. So she checked clear for those other ones, but things like that are happening in the brain it's always growing, it's always changing. So things could develop later. Fortunately, the more serious seizures are probably out of our worry because those usually develop earlier on, like severe epilepsy and stuff like that. But yeah, as she grows and changes, it's hard to say if anything else will kind of come up. But so far, she's super smart kid. She's very into music, which is amazing because that's a very very impactful thing on the corpus callosum. So when you don't even have one, it really helps kind of connect those two sides too. And she loves like numbers and letters and memorizing things. That kid has a memory of an elephant. Like she can so she has a lot of strengths too, so it's pretty fantastic.
That's a blessing.
How she works.
Yeah.
She's very inquisitive on how things work and very kind of almost like an engineer. I always say she has an engineer brain because she's like, how does this work? How do I manipulate it? How can I play with this? So
yeah. And that's the great thing too about the brain. The brain has plasticity. So, even though it may have been damaged, it's able to, still like grow. And one thing I noticed since I used to work with children that have visual impairments, is that like with my daughter with the CVI, when she first was diagnosed with it, she would make eye contact with us. She wasn't tracking. She preferred one side. You have to bring things close. You got to have the contrast and, all those things like that. But now that she's grown older, I mean, she like tries to make eye contact. She will look to both sides. Like she will try and track things a little bit. So definitely like the vision has improved instead of decreased. And then also I like kind of advocated for her to have glasses, even though I was like, they're like, I don't know if it's going to make a difference or not if she wears glasses, but I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
She has a little script, give it to me, and we're going to try the glasses out. And I think the glasses like really helped improve, her vision some wearing the glasses. And
and that's amazing. It really shows what that early intervention can do. Like it's not going to hurt, and when you have this like with the ACC, I always encourage parents, like, get them into, like, if most states offer some sort of like birth to 3 program where you should qualify if like to get them in-home occupational therapy access and speech therapy. And even if it's like not obvious that they're needing it right away, if they can qualify it with that disability, like take advantage, because every little step helps. And like you said, the brain is so amazing. Like I've done a lot of more research on it, and like even seeing people who've experienced brain traumas or accidents and stuff, and like how those specialized therapies can really just impact it and help it and heal it. And it's just amazing. The brain is extremely like an incredible thing that is able to do so many more things that we even realize. And so it's just cool to see her overcome some of those things that, you might assume that her brain won't be able to figure out, but it does, because her brain doesn't know that it's missing anything. It just knows what it is, and it's doing its thing. And so it's pretty cool to watch.
Wow. So now when you got your anatomy scan at like around, I guess, 20 weeks they do it, did they see it then, or this was just from blood work?
So the blood work was what told them I had the blood work done. I think it was like 13 weeks or whatever. And then they said, hey, it came back as potential for spina bifida. So at your 20-week ultrasound, we're going to do a level 2 ultrasound, which is apparently like a little bit more in depth of one than a standard. And so at that 20-week ultrasound, they were looking for it. And at first they couldn't really tell for sure if it was missing. They saw an absent, it's called, another long word, cavum septum pellucidum, which is a marker on the brain that all babies should have. It's like a little space that they're supposed to have, and that was absent. So they said because she's missing that, it's indicative that she is likely missing her corpus callosum or something else is going on. So then they said, we recommend you do a fetal MRI, which is very challenging sometimes with babies because, you can't make them stay still in there. But they were able to do that around like 27 weeks is when they did that. And they were able to confirm that, yes, she's missing it. And so it was just more of like a knowledge thing of like, they offered to do the amniocentesis, I think that's how you pronounce it. But I opted out of that as I wouldn't have benefited. Like there was nothing I could do beyond just knowing. And it was more of a risk than it was worth for me. So I opted out of that. If she had for sure been more leaning towards the spina bifida, I may have opted for that because I've read that there's things that they can do in utero for spina bifida. And so I was like, in that case, but with mine, it was like, well, it is what it is sort of thing. So we just accepted that and kind of moved forward with that instead of opting into any more infiltrating of
that amniotic fluid, that's no joke. That's serious.
I was already worried into like before all of the drama started, I was already really nervous in my pregnancy because I had so before I got pregnant with her, I had an earlier like miscarriage. It was like very early on. And then I had during my pregnancy with her, I had some spotting and stuff very early on. So I was from the beginning, she was just drama. I always joke, she's like giving me more stress than necessary. And from the start, she was worth it. She was worth it.
And look at her now. Just look.
I know. She's a spicy little thing. I love her. She's so funny, and she has a great sense of humor, and that's one thing I love, because sometimes sense of humor can be harder for people with ACC because they can be very literal. So some things it's hard to know, like, if how their sense of humor will be, or they may be more have a hard time interpreting sarcasm and stuff like that, which we're not sure for. Like, she does have some communication delays, so we aren't for sure like how she will long term be impacted, but she's hilarious. She knows how to make people laugh, so that's always great to see.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then you said, so she has feeding, OT, and PT. So does she get
no PT right now, just speech? Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Do you guys have vision services?
We have before gotten vision therapy. When she was in the Birth to 3 program, we had vision therapy, but then over time, they didn't really consider her qualified anymore for it, that she didn't need it so much. Like I said, it seems like her vision overall improved, but early on, it was fantastic. The vision therapist would come into our home and work on those things. And so we definitely took advantage of it at the time, but she no longer needs that. So we just continue to see like ophthalmology through the Children's Hospital and everything.
So how is her weight gain right now?
Now that she's on growth hormones, it's fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did get her put on growth hormones a year ago because she was pretty petite still. So she just now is almost hitting 40 pounds, and she's turning 8 in August. So she's a tiny little thing. But she's definitely grown a lot in height since we started it. And the growth hormone stuff, though, that's a whole other story in itself. There was like a shortage when we started, and but it's just, and it can be hard to get through like the process of being approved for it and everything, but we were able to do that, and so it's been very helpful to her so far.
Does she like Pediasure or no?
No. We tried that initially with the food, but that's when I started making up, like I said, that kind of milkshake thing. It's kind of the same concept, but without whatever they put in it. I just kind of make it my own way. So yeah, we tried that initially, and she was like, not happening.
Nope, not gonna do it. My son has feeding. He's still G-tube fed, and his favorite thing is the naked juices, strawberry banana. He'll drink that, but he won't drink Pediasure. So I blend it with his food. It's like I'm like, everyone I thought loved Pediasure. But he's like, nope, I don't want no parts of it. So I'm just like,
I'll be fair, I didn't care for the taste of it either. I was like, oh, it's like, I don't know, kind of like sugar.
That's what my mom said. She goes, well, you try it. I'm like, no, I don't want it either. Mellow alone just makes me like, ugh. But yeah, so his drink of choice is naked, the naked juice.
Oh, and I'll have to try that.
And we'll get him to drink some smoothies, but it can't be like, it has to be Smoothie King consistency and not tropical smoothie, because they still have the thickness. I'm like, dude. So I understand what you mean by picky.
No changes. No, that's like with the mac and cheese. For a while, she would eat any mac and cheese. Then it was like only Kraft mac and cheese, no fancy mac and cheese, and now we got no mac and cheese. And
so she likes softer food.
Does she eat it has to be food? Kind of. Not really. No, she used to eat like crackers that would dissolve, and that's the thing, is she doesn't really chew properly. She just will kind of sort of chew on it until it's able to be swallowed. Like when she did eat those little Gerber ravioli things, she would practically swallow them whole, and I'm like,
gotcha. Okay.
I'm like, girl, you are stressing me out. And so my husband's like, we gotta cut them in half. I'm like, they're already so tiny. So, and I meant to ask you both what exactly. I know you mentioned your daughters with her vision and everything, but what are each of your child's diagnoses exactly? I was just curious.
Well, my daughter, she has quadriplegic cerebral palsy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And my son, mild cerebral palsy and globally developmentally delayed.
Okay. Yeah. And I have a friend with her son.
We're set up to he has a trach and a G-tube, so we're waiting until he gets the trach out to go ahead and get him tested for autism. We don't know due to COVID and just his other things that are going on, if that's why he's considered like socially awkward, because he hasn't been around a lot of people. So we're waiting to see before we go ahead and jump full force into getting an autism diagnoses or whatever.
Yeah.
Right now, to me, he's fine. And like, he just socializes with who he wants. He's like his mother. He has a little toot at times. Look, you know, I want him socializing with everyone anyway, so I'm fine with it. I mean, but we're trying to, so he's fine at school. He's in the ESC program. He's not in general education yet. So he's around his peers. So what he does, you know, we're out at places. As long as we have a tablet and a phone, he'll sit through a restaurant.
Sounds about right.
Gotta have a tablet and a phone. And we're fine. He talks, you know, he's picky eater. We start back feeding therapy because we stopped while school was going on because it was just a little too much on him. Yeah. So we go for our eval on Wednesday. So we'll start that back to hopefully get him chewing some food. So, I get what you mean by that. That's a hard one. And it freaks me out. So I'm like your husband. No, he can't. Just leave it alone. You want something to drink? Yeah, that's easier, you know, because the chewing freaks me out. So I get
it's so hard. And it's funny you talked about the social thing, because my daughter only recently she started to kind of be more interested in her peers. It was like unless they were an adult or an older child, she was like, you know, you don't have any benefit to me. And so she'd kind of just ignore them, or like they'll come up in her space and she'll just be like, essentially telling them that they can move on and go away. She's just like, you go over there. I'm doing my own thing.
Like, I'm good over here. Leave me alone. Thank you.
Yeah. And like, she's starting to warm up. And like some of the kids at school, because I asked her teacher, you know, because we've actually moved a few times, and which is also a whole challenge in its own, starting over and then over again with setting up your services and all that and starting a new school. But before we moved the last time, I had found out right before we moved that there was this one little girl that really got attached to my daughter and was like a friend to her and very protective of her. But I didn't even know about it until we were moving. And so I asked her teachers now, I'm like, well, is she making any friends, you know, anyone? And they were like, oh, well, there's this one little girl who, at first Gwen's like, you know, bye. And then, but she kept trying and finally has like kind of figured out what gets Gwen interested. And so there, you know, she's got some friends that kind of focus on trying to interact with her and they know what she likes and stuff like that. But it is hard for her. Like if Gwen isn't trying, a lot of kids don't keep trying. And that's what I think is really important to teach all kids, is that some people just take a little bit more warming up to do. You know, some of these kids, it's just, you got to find what their interests are. You know, Gwen likes certain active play and stuff. It's just kind of teaching them what her preferences are, and it's not always what typical kids might like. She doesn't you know, care about the class parties or, you know, certain things that, you know, kids get excited about. She's just like, I want to roll down this hill, or, you know, play with the fan, you know. So they kind of get on her level, they'll connect with her.
That's good though. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know earlier when you were, you know, giving birth and everything, and it was almost, you know, a debate whether you guys should go home or go to the NICU, you know, and then you were a first-time mom. And, you know, these are things that we need as parents and, you know, as mothers, especially first-time mothers, because I think a lot of us, you know, when we've had our children, it was kind of like, okay, you know, I don't know what to do. So we're just going along with whatever the doctor says or suggests, you know, is right. And because we think that that is the right thing since they're the medical professional. But it's good, you know, that you kind of advocated for yourself and your child and was like, no, I think we need to go to the NICU. I would feel more comfortable doing that. So with that being said, in the school system, you know, with her, does she have an IEP?
Yes, she does have an IEP.
Okay. So like, how have things been with that as far as, you know, you being able to get the things that she's supposed to get in her IEP, or, you know, like appointments and therapies? Have you had any trouble getting those things and, you know, having to be like a real strong advocate for your child and you like push to get the things that she needs?
Yeah, so the only hiccup I had so far, which again, we've moved 3 times. And so she's been at like 4 different schools. Right. And so the only issue I had was when we moved to Virginia first, from Washington State to Virginia. And that was her second year of preschool. And they said that we do full day here. And I said, that's not something that she's able to handle. And they like kind of gave me a little bit of pushback on it at first, saying, well, that's just how we do it. I said, well, she's not going full day, so figure it out. And so they accepted my request. And then a month later, the teacher came back and was like, she was fantastic. She was like, yeah, you were right. Your daughter taps out at the half day mark. And I said, I know. Imagine.
Yeah, right.
I knew. And so ever since then, though, honestly, I have felt very privileged in the sense that we have been lucky to have amazing teams with all of the schools that we've been at in 3 different states. I don't know how it's happened, but we've been very fortunate that we have not had a lot of pushback and we've had a lot of encouragement. And because you hear very much the opposite a lot of the time. And going from Washington to Virginia to Colorado back to Washington, I'm like, at some point we're going to run out of luck. But and I don't know, as she gets older and kind of has different challenges, if that will change. But so far, I have been so lucky. We've had amazing teams. She's had amazing para-educators at all of her schools. And I don't know how we've gotten so lucky, because I just heard, I'm like wondering, I'm like, am I missing something that I'm supposed to be pushing back on? Like, you just hear that that's such a struggle for people. And so I do try to talk about that, because I'm like, well, there is good ones out there. It's just, but I do communicate a lot with her teachers all the time. I mean, I pick her up from school. I have conversations almost every day with her para about how her day was, what her struggles were. You know, I just am constantly in contact with them. So they don't really get much of a choice in hearing my thoughts on things. And I have built great relationships with all of them so far.
That's good. And so I don't know, like if you may have been like on a different career path or a different life path before your daughter, but do you feel as if, having your daughter has changed your life significantly, or you may be doing something and you had to stop, and kind of redirect your life plans?
Yeah. So when I had my daughter, I was working, I had a job that was in the office, and I had my daughter, and I went back to work. And then when my daughter was approaching 3 months and we kind of started having the stuff that we were dealing with, I asked them, I said, hey, I know some other people here work, at home sometimes. Is that a possibility for me? And it just wasn't able to work with them. And so at that point, I made the decision to step out of that job and stay home with my daughter and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I had some work from home jobs that I would like. I did tow dispatching in the middle of the night, which is a terrible idea when you have a baby. But I tried that, and then I started my own business in event planning. And so I kind of was like bouncing around, trying my own stuff, but I was able to do that. I think the biggest thing that I would say is impacted is just, me and my husband have been together for almost 10 years, or actually we've been together like 12 years, but married almost 10 years. And it just really makes you be very aware of your relationship and how important communication is. And that's really the biggest impact, is the relationship. And, the statistics are not pretty on people with disabilities in marriage. It's very daunting when you read the statistics. You're like, oh, it is very, it can be very challenging. And especially if you're newer into marriage, like we were only, we weren't very far into being married when we had our daughter. And so, we've done a pretty good job at communicating, and, everyone has their ups and downs, but it just, because we know of how challenging it is, we are very on top of it with being, advocating for ourselves and talking through things. And, he has his concerns, I have mine, and we work through them every time. And so, that's been a thing, is just, when you become a parent, that's the thing, is you never know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to have a typical child or not a typical child, or even any child, and just being aware that you have to be willing to get what you're dealt sometimes and work to maintain that in the best possible way, you know. And so it just really has taught us, you know, the importance of communicating with your spouse, and also in the importance of still finding a way, no matter what, to take care of each other as your relationship. You know, it's your kid always comes first half the time, and sometimes you don't have family support or other support, and that's really hard. But just kind of making time for each other, even if it's like after they're sleeping, and my child doesn't sleep well either. That's a huge other point of contention with how things are going with her. But she doesn't sleep well. She doesn't go to bed early like some kids do. So it's hard for us to find that time sometimes. But sometimes it's like, oh, she went to bed at midnight. Okay, we're going to watch a show and we'll just suffer later for it. But, you know, you make time for it, and you have to prioritize that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, speaking of the sleep, oh my gosh, we had a very long span of years that, I mean, there was like no sleep. There was screaming and yelling and everything all the time. Like her dad would sometimes be like, I'm about to go sleep in the car because I cannot even deal with this. Like, I just need to get like one good night of sleep.
Right.
And we finally have, knock on wood, we finally have a medicine that has been working after we've tried every medicine under the sun for sleep. We finally have found a medicine that has been working pretty good. So I'm hoping that continues to work. So I don't know, like if you use
you're gonna have to hook me up, because we've also like tried. No amount of melatonin is gonna save her. And then you got people that are like, just try lavender, and I'm like, I was like, right. I've tried everything. Okay. And that's a lot of kids with ACC have sleep issues and stuff. But I mean, she slept okay. Like a baby might sleep a little iffy for the first year or two, but then after year 2, I'm on year almost 8, and I'm like, is it ever going to happen? You know, so she just, it's like a walking zombie. I know. And my husband, he wakes up to everything, and I'm usually like sometimes I'm next to her, and I'm so tired that I can kind of sleep through her like yelling at me for her iPad. But he's like in the other room, like, what's happening in there? And I'm like, what? Oh, yelling on her iPad. You know, but I'm like sleeping through it all, the tornado, and he's just like, what's happening? But like, I'm so tired.
Right.
And then you said there's a group or an organization that does like research and provides information about the diagnosis. What is that? And like, what research do they have currently like going on? Anything new?
So they, it's called the National Organization for Disorders of the Corpus Callosum. We just stick to the long names of, but NODCC. They have a webpage that provides, you know, how to tell others about your diagnosis, from, you know, educators to family. They have great video resources explaining it in very simple terms of what it looks like for somebody with ACC or you know, there's other disorders of some people have, you know, thinning or partially developed or other issues too. So it kind of covers a variety of disorders for that. But and they constantly are updating, like they've gotten really active lately on their social media as well. And they do, one amazing resource that they've gotten consistent on is Zoom calls for different scenarios. So they have a Zoom call that they do for new and expecting parents of that. They have a dad. My husband attended the dad's one, and it was just all these dads for different ages, and they were all just, it's just such a great way for them to be like, oh, we're all in the same boat here. You know, things that my husband sometimes is like worried that, you know, we're struggling with. He's like, oh, okay, I feel better knowing that they're also struggling with that, and they're 2 years ahead of us. So they have, you know, different categories. Oh, they had a grandparents one. My parents attended, and it was just very eye-opening for them to be able to actually even talk to adults that have the disorder, and they learned so much. And so it's just I love that they're doing that now, because and I sent the links to other people. I'm like, hey, here's your chance to know some other people. And So they do that. And then the conference, like I said, is just, I've gone to one so far, and it is just so beneficial to like meet other people. And they do different seminars on different topics. Like when I went, they did one like about potty training and, how to handle that with your circumstance. And then they offered you opportunities to speak to the different doctors that are doing the researches and stuff. So they're doing another one next year in DC, I think. So that'll be the next one, is Washington, DC.
Sure.
I'm really excited to attend that because it's just such a cool opportunity to see all these different families and get your resources all in one place. And they do a little like party at the end, just like any, fun conference. And you just get to kind of intermingle with all these different families. And so it's been awesome.
And see, this is why we do this, because I never even heard of this organization.
Yeah.
So there's like so many resources out there that, we don't know about, and then free resources at that.
Yes.
And it's just so much information, and, you could be dealing with this or something similar. And like you said, there's different, types of the corpus callosum diagnoses. So like, I need to go look on here and see if, there's something that can help me. This is just awesome. And so, of course, the podcast is here so that we can, encourage each other, give each other, uplifting words, and just motivate each other to continue to keep going through these challenging times. And so, as a mother with a child that has a rare diagnosis, what's some advice that you would give a parent or a family that's dealing with something similar?
Yeah, I would say just take each day by day and try not to focus too much on what the future is, because every parent doesn't know what the future holds for their child. But for us, especially with children with disabilities, it can be more scary to kind of go down that tunnel of like, are they going to be okay as adults? And you kind of like get into that mindset of worry. But a lot of times you get to there are opportunities to pause and just enjoy your baby for who they are and what they are, and love your baby. And when my daughter was born, the ACC diagnosis at that point did not matter. All I wanted to know was that I was able to see my baby and that she was going to at least be okay. She was in good hands. And I know that some parents go through a lot harder of a situation than I did even. It's like, yes, mine was hard, but there's different kinds of hard. But I feel like even if you have the harder situation, there are those moments to take in and just enjoy your baby and stop the stuff that is bad and like worrying and just because it can get consuming. It can get, like I said, I'm a researcher, and it can consume you. And sometimes being in the, like I said, I'm in the Facebook groups and stuff, and they're amazing, and I think they're a huge, important resource. But there are times where you are seeing kind of some of the harder times that people are going through, and sometimes that can be hard to like process, and you kind of get like too much. So you have to step away again and like just appreciate your moment. So I think it's just, finding that balance of, advocating and researching and doing all the things, but also taking time to breathe and just be with your child. And so, yeah.
Definitely great advice. And, like she said, we can only take it day by day. You can't, worry about what's going to happen in the future. We only can live in the present and, not put any more stress on our minds and bodies than we already have. And, sometimes the children can feel that too. And so you don't want to bring that energy around the children as well. So, thank you so much for those words.
Yes.
And, I hope that someone that needs to hear that is able to hear that and take that in and, just keep on pushing along in this journey and know that there are resources available. And, this will be posted on our Facebook page, Two Moms and Some Labels. And also I'll put the link to the nodcc.org. And then I'll try to see about the Facebook groups too. But this will be on Facebook, on Spotify, Apple, and on our YouTube channel, Two Moms and Some Labels. And I just want to thank you so much, Felicia, for taking this time out of your day to come on here with us and share your story with us, share your daughter with us. We really appreciate that. And, we just want to reach out and help other families that may be going through this also, and just also give some more education to people that are unaware of this diagnosis. And we just thank you so much again for coming on with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This was my, very first one. I was like, not sure what to expect. And you guys, absolutely, I think it's awesome what you're doing, and just seeing more podcasts like this come into the world and kind of with more variety, because some of them are very, focus based on specific needs, but having that kind of variety is such an awesome thing and really cool to connect. So
thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Two Moms and Some Labels. And we will catch you on the next episode. Make sure that you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, Apple, Spotify, and Facebook. And we have an IG now, so go check us out. And thanks to Felicia, I started the IG page. So.
I saw that. I was like, oh, she did it.
Yeah. So, sometimes we need that push. And, talking to someone else, they can give you lots of encouragement. And you definitely did that. So thank you again. And we'll see you all on the next episode of Two Moms and Some Labels.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.